Riches do not respond to wishes. They respond only to definite plans, backed by definite desires, through constant persistence. Most people will live their entire lives believing they were unlucky. They will say the world was unfair, that the system was rigged, that opportunities were scarce and reserved for someone else, someone smarter, someone richer, someone born in the right place at the right time. They will repeat the story so often that it becomes truth to them. And that belief, repeated daily, quietly becomes a prison they never realized they built for themselves. Because poverty, long before it is a number in a bank account, is a condition of the mind, and wealth, long before it shows up as money, is a state of inner permission. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that most people never decide. They drift, they react, they wait for clarity to arrive before acting, not understanding that clarity is a reward of action, not its prerequisite. They hope confidence will appear before commitment, not realizing confidence is forged only after commitment has already been made. And so they stand at the edge of their potential their entire lives, staring at a future they secretly want but never fully claim. Every great fortune ever created began as a thought held with obsession, backed by faith, and followed by relentless action, not wishful thinking, not casual desire, but a burning, disciplined fixation on a definite outcome. The mind does not move toward what it merely wants. It moves toward what is decided. And this is where the majority quietly lose a game before it even begins. They want wealth, but they never decide to become wealthy. They admire success, but they never align their identity with the discipline success demands. Look at history closely, and you will see a pattern so consistent it borders on law. Edison failed thousands of times before the world called him a genius. Ford was mocked, bankrupted, and dismissed before he reshaped industry. Carnegie began with nothing but an idea and a willingness to think differently than the masses around him. These men were not superhuman. They were not immune to fear or doubt. What separated them was not intelligence, but allegiance. They pledged loyalty to a vision long before the world offered proof. The average person waits for proof. The exceptional person becomes a proof. Most people are unconsciously loyal to comfort. They structure their days around avoiding discomfort, avoiding embarrassment, avoiding failure. And in doing so, they unknowingly avoid growth. Wealth is never built in the zone of convenience. It is built in the tension between who you are and who you are becoming. It is built in moments where the old identity resists and the new identity demands discipline. And the majority will always choose the familiar pain over the unfamiliar promise. The mind seeks patterns it can predict. That is why mediocrity feels safe. It offers certainty without responsibility. But the moment you choose to rise, you choose uncertainty. You choose to think independently in a world addicted to consensus. You choose to act decisively in a culture that rewards hesitation disguised as caution. And this is why so few ever break free, because freedom requires internal authority. Wealth begins when you stop outsourcing your decisions to fear, tradition, and other people's expectations. When you stop asking for permission to want more. When you stop shrinking your vision to fit the comfort level of those around you. The world does not reward potential. It rewards alignment. And alignment begins with belief. Not the shallow kind spoken in affirmations, but the deep, embodied belief that shapes your behavior when no one is watching. Your dominant thoughts are not neutral. They are instructions. Repeated thoughts carve grooves in the subconscious, and those grooves quietly dictate habits. Habits dictate actions, and actions dictate results. This is why most people never get rich. They allow their mental environment to be polluted by doubt, comparison, and inherited limitations. They consume opinions instead of principles. They listen to voices that have never built what they desire. And slowly, almost invisibly, they program themselves for limitation. The mind, when left undisciplined, defaults to survival. And survival thinking will never create abundance. Survival asks, what if it doesn't work? Creation asks, what must I become to make it work? One contracts. The other expands. One seeks safety. The other seeks growth. And every day, through seemingly small choices, you are voting for one or the other. Clarity is not something you wait for. It is something you claim. The wealthy are not those with fewer questions, but those who refuse to let uncertainty paralyze them. They move forward while refining the vision. They adjust without abandoning the mission. Most people quit not because they fail, but because they interpret resistance as a sign to stop rather than a signal that growth is underway. Purpose is the stabilizing force that keeps you moving when motivation fades. And motivation always fades. Anyone waiting to feel inspired before acting will live a life of half-starts and quiet regret. Purpose is what anchors discipline. It is the reason you wake up early when no one is watching. It is the reason you continue when the applause is absent. Without purpose, wealth becomes hollow. With purpose, effort becomes meaningful, and sacrifice becomes fuel. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the daily declaration that your future matters more than your impulses. The majority confuse discipline with deprivation, not realizing it is a bridge between vision and reality. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And most people never build systems because systems require consistency, and consistency exposes who you truly are. Action is a great separator. Ideas are abundant. Intentions are cheap. Execution is rare. The wealthy act before they feel ready. They learn while moving. They correct course in motion. The majority wait for the perfect plan, not understanding that perfection is a myth invented by fear to delay action. Momentum creates confidence. Stillness breeds doubt. Gratitude grounds ambition. It prevents hunger from becoming desperation and drive from becoming emptiness. True wealth is not the absence of desire, but the presence of appreciation. Those who are grateful for progress attract more progress. Those who resent the gap between where they are and where they want to be poison their own journey. Gratitude keeps the mind open, receptive, and resilient. Adaptability is the currency of longevity. The world changes. Markets shift. Industries evolve. The rigid break. The adaptable compound. Most people cling to what once worked, confusing familiarity with security. The wealthy observe, learn, and adjust without ego. They understand that identity must be flexible while principles remain firm. Resilience is built through voluntary hardship. When you choose challenges, challenges do not choose you. Every setback contains instruction. Every failure refines perception. The majority personalize defeat. The successful extract data. One collapses inward. The other recalibrates and advances. Wealth is not built by avoiding pain, but by metabolizing it into wisdom. Learning is not an event. It is a posture. The moment you believe you know enough, you stop growing. The wealthy remain students of life. They read, observe, test, and reflect. They seek mentors not to be saved, but to be sharpened. The majority seek shortcuts. The successful seek mastery. And finally, understand this truth. Money is not the reward. It is the echo. It echoes value, discipline, clarity, and courage. Chase money, and you will always feel behind. Become the kind of person who creates value, and money will follow as a byproduct. Wealth responds to who you are being, not what you are wishing. Most people will never enrich themselves because they never enrich their thinking. They never challenge their assumptions. They never rewrite their inner script. But you are not most people. Not because you are special by chance, but because you are willing to choose deliberately, to think independently, to act decisively, to persist when it would be easier to quit. The moment you decide, truly decide, that your life will not be defined by limitation, something irreversible happens. Your standards rise. Your tolerance for excuses collapses. Your actions begin to align with your vision. And slowly, inevitably, reality bends to meet the new version of you. This is not luck. This is law. And now that you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you see it, the responsibility becomes unavoidable. Because ignorance is comfortable, but awareness demands action. The moment you recognize that your outcomes are not random, that your financial reality is not an accident, that your future is not sealed by fate or background or economy, you are no longer allowed the luxury of victimhood. You may still feel fear. You may still experience doubt. But you can no longer pretend you are powerless. And that realization is both terrifying and liberating. Most people spend their lives negotiating with their potential. They tell themselves, one day when things are more stable, one day when I feel more confident, one day when I know enough. That day never arrives because it was never real. It was a psychological delay tactic, a way to avoid the discomfort of becoming someone new. Growth requires an identity death, and the ego resists death more than it resists failure. To become wealthy, you must outgrow the version of you that feels validated by playing small. You must let go of the identity that is bonded to struggle, to being understood, to being liked. Wealth requires solitude at times. It requires walking ahead of your environment before your environment understands where you're going. And most people would rather be accepted than be free. The subconscious mind is loyal, not intelligent. It does not judge whether a belief serves you. It only enforces what you repeatedly feed it. This is why people remain trapped in financial cycles that feel almost hereditary. They inherit not just habits, but interpretations. Interpretations about money being hard, about rich people being greedy, about success requiring sacrifice of joy or morality. These ideas are absorbed early, reinforced socially, and rarely questioned. And whatever is not questioned becomes law in the mind. You cannot build wealth with a subconscious that secretly rejects wealth. The mind will always sabotage outcomes it believes are unsafe or undeserved. This is why so many people get close, then collapse, close to success, then distracted, close to momentum, then overwhelmed, close to freedom, then afraid. Their conscious desire conflicts with their subconscious programming, and the subconscious always wins unless it is deliberately reconditioned. Reconditioning begins with deliberate thought selection, not positive thinking, but accurate thinking. Thinking rooted in cause and effect. Thinking that understands that every external result has an internal origin. When you change inner narrative, behavior shifts naturally. When behavior shifts consistently, results have no choice but to follow. This is not mysticism. This is mechanics. The wealthy think in terms of leverage, not just financial leverage, but mental and behavioral leverage. They ask, what action today compounds tomorrow? While the majority ask, what relieves discomfort right now? One builds momentum. The other seeks relief. And relief is the enemy of growth. Time is the great revealer. It exposes who is consistent and who is merely enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is loud but short-lived. Discipline is quiet and permanent. Anyone can feel inspired after a video, a book, a conversation. But inspiration fades. What remains is who you are when the feeling disappears. That is where wealth is decided. Most people confuse movement with progress. They stay busy to avoid confronting whether they are effective. They mistake effort for alignment. But effort without direction exhausts the soul. Wealth requires clarity of aim, a definite chief purpose, not a vague wish to do better, but precise vision that organizes thought, emotion, and action into a single direction. When your aim is clear, decisions become simpler. Distractions lose their power. You begin to say no without guilt. You begin to value your energy as much as your time. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your life reorganizes itself around your purpose. Opportunities appear, not because the world suddenly changed, but because your perception sharpened. Perception is everything. Two people can stand in the same environment and see entirely different realities. One sees limitation. The other sees possibility. One sees risk. The other sees leverage. The difference is not intelligence. It is conditioning. The mind filters reality based on what has been trained to look for. Train it to see obstacles, and you'll find them everywhere. Train it to see opportunity, and the world becomes a different place. Wealth also demands patience with process. The majority want results without incubation. They want harvest without seasons. But everything meaningful grows in silence before it becomes visible. Roots are formed underground. Foundations are poured before structures rise. Those who quit early never see the compounding effect that rewards persistence. And compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. Not just in money, but in habits, relationships, skills, and character. Small disciplines practiced daily outperform. Grand gestures practiced occasionally. The wealthy understand this intuitively. They do not underestimate the power of incremental progress. They respect time. They allow results to mature. Fear never disappears. It only changes shape. At first, fear is about failure. Later, it becomes fear of success, fear of responsibility, fear of visibility, fear of outgrowing relationships. Each new level demands a new conversation with fear. And those who win are not fearless. They are loyal to their purpose even when fear speaks loudly. Your environment will test your resolve. People will question your choices, project their insecurities, offer advice disguised as concern, not because they wish you harm, but because your growth threatens their comfort. When you change, you force others to confront their own stagnation. And not everyone is ready for that mirror. This is why solitude is sometimes necessary. Not isolation, but intentional separation from noise. Space to think, to plan, to recalibrate. The mind cannot create while constantly reacting. Wealth is born in stillness, then built in action. Reflection without execution is fantasy. Execution without reflection is chaos. Mastery requires both. You must also make peace with delayed gratification. The ability to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term freedom is one of the clearest predictors of wealth. Most people know this intellectually, but few embody it behaviorally. They trade their future for their present without realizing the transaction they are making. And by the time the bill arrives, they call it bad luck. Money is a mirror. It reflects discipline, values, self-worth, and decision-making. If you avoid looking at it, managing it, learning about it, you are avoiding a mirror that could teach you who you are becoming. Financial literacy is not about greed. It is about stewardship, about directing energy responsibly, about understanding the flow of value. The wealthy do not worship money. They respect it. They understand its rules. They do not romanticize poverty or demonize success. They see money as a tool, amplifying who you already are. If you are disciplined, money expands discipline. If you are chaotic, money amplifies chaos. This is why character always precedes fortune. And when setbacks come, and they will, you must resist the temptation to interpret them as verdicts. A setback is not a sentence. It is feedback. It is information. It is part of the refinement process. Those who succeed long-term develop emotional resilience. They do not attach their identity to temporary outcomes. They remain steady while adjusting strategy. The steadiness is rare, and rarity is always rewarded. Most people never enrich themselves because they abandon the path the moment it demands endurance. They want transformation without tension, growth without friction, reward without responsibility. But the laws of life do not negotiate. They respond only to alignment, persistence, and courage. And now you stand at a quiet crossroads, not a dramatic one, not a loud one, but a decisive one, because understanding without application changes nothing. Insight without action is intellectual entertainment. The question is no longer whether wealth is possible. The question is whether you are willing to become the kind of person who makes it inevitable. The moment you choose consistency over comfort, clarity over chaos, purpose over approval, everything begins to shift. Not overnight, not magically, but inevitably, step by step, thought by thought, action by action. And one day, you will look back and realize the truth most never see, that the greatest risk was never failing. It was never deciding at all.